right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's presentation. And it is for our 2025-02 tax certificate preparations. Just a quick little bit of an overview of what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to have a look at how and where we can extract our information from these different payroll systems, from Psiber, VIP, SCBPP. They're very much the same sort of piece of software, just one is online. The Sage 300 people, as well as from Payspace. And then on Easyfile, obviously there is a new piece of software there. So things look just a little bit different. It's actually quite easy to use. It's not difficult at all, and we'll run through that a little bit later on. And I'm going to run through the actual extracting the required information and what information we need to look at, because that's remained pretty static the entire time that we've been doing these sort of things. So all their payroll softwares have their general reports that we would use. They have their procedures that we should follow, and we'll run through those quite quickly today. And we'll spend a little bit more time on the actual Easyfile software itself, because that is the newest piece of this link. So for our assumptions, we will be assuming that you have your EMP501s or your EMPSA, or some sort of manual reconciliation, so that you know that your information is correct and there is a date incorrect there. It should be for February up to February 2025. So in other words, that you know that the amount of money that you have paid away to SARS for those periods for all of the items that you pay SARS. So that would be your PAYE, your SDL, and your UIF if you're liable for those. We assume that you have a basic understanding of your payroll system and that you're able to navigate around your system. So today you'll see a lot of different payroll systems. So if you're a SCBPP client, you can comfortably ignore the stuff on Sage 300 and Payspace and Psiber for argument's sake. And you have installed the new version of Easyfile. So on their version numbers, you should be on version 8 point lots of zeros 258. So a lot of people are still on 257, and you can follow the normal update procedure that you can use within the software. On the old version, the software didn't update itself very well, and we frequently had to uninstall, reinstall. And although sometimes that still happens, generally speaking, the internal update within the Easyfile software is a lot better, and it can and it functions quite nicely all of its own. Who has to submit? So we do this every time. Everyone, if you are registered with SARS, you have to submit your EMP5, even EMP501 reconciliation biannually. In other words, for your August submission, as well as then for your February submission. As a matter of dates, our submission window opened on the 1st of April and will close on the last day of May this year, as it normally does. So there's generally no extensions, so try and get your stuff in early. SARS don't like it when we leave everything to the last minute, so please try and avoid that. And some of the things that we'll do today will help you to try and alleviate that stress and panic that comes in when you realize it's the 29th and you haven't done your submission yet. And again, here we've spoken about our deadlines already. The full employee validation takes place on all submissions, and the ETS claiming cycle is only up until the end of February. So it's from your September period to February. General steps that we're going to suggest that you would follow is preparation. We're going to verify all the submission data, and that includes your company and your employee information. We're going to export the interface file. You're going to load it in to Easyfile, employer, verify, and submit it to SARS. Please note, we're going to suggest you make lots of backups, not just make a backup. Lots and lots of backups. Whenever you go through a period or you're unsure of something, do yourself a favor, make a backup of your database at that point, because if you don't, you can cause yourself no end of hassles later on when you try and get back to a specific point in time, and you can't, and you have to go and recreate that situation. So while we're talking about backups, a little point to note is that this is the first time that SARS are saying you have to use their new version of the software to do your submission. Most importantly about that is that your old Easyfile backups do not restore into this software. So I'll slow that down a little bit. Your old versions of Easyfile backups do not restore into the software. You can retrieve data, so you can go and get a specific submissions data, but the backups don't restore in. They're not compatible. So when you start off this exercise, it will have created a blank database for you when you installed Easyfile Employer for the first time of the new version. And as we work through loading your data into there, it will create a new backup for you, or a new system in inverted commas for you. Okay. So a little bit of housekeeping, guys, please. If you do have any questions, please just pop them into the chat. And Charlene will periodically ask me to stop and answer some questions. So if there are any questions during the course of what we're discussing, please just give me a, or just post them in that chat. So let's get into this. So into preparation. There's always complexity about ETR. If you claim ETR, please make sure that you have sufficient time to do reconciliations, to check that all of the people that you have claimed for are valid. And hopefully you've been doing that on a monthly basis. So by the time we get to this point in the year, you already know that everything is ready. Okay. So as it says there, it's prudent to prepare. And yeah, there are lots of areas that are verified. So it's important for you to check your ETR. And then we've also got ETR changes from the beginning of this month. So it's a good time for you to review and check for your next submission period. So not this period. So for your August submission for 2026. So that's just a little aside there. So with those changes, please make yourself comfortable with them and understand what it is that you can and can't claim, who can and can't claim, and perhaps engage with your payroll or payroll team if you need to. What do we need to check? What are our general problem areas? Master file details are not up to scratch. What do I mean by master? So this would be all your employee details, names, addresses, ID numbers. Commonly, we see name and address issues. We see names with special characters in where they're not allowed. So special characters being question marks, slashes, brackets, all those sorts of fun things, as well as the colons, semicolons, that sort of backslashes. So that's fairly common to see, you know, as somebody's typing it in or on a spreadsheet, it's been brought in incorrectly, and there's a field there or a character in the field that doesn't work. A common issue there as well is that people don't have the full first name, they just put initials in. SARS obviously don't really like that, but you know, it is what it is. Residential and postal addresses, please use the SARS layout. So if you have an engagement form that you use for your employees, please make sure that the layout is correct in that form so that you don't go through this pain later on when you are trying to do your submission. We know when something doesn't match up and now you've got to go back to the employee or the employees rather and ask them for information. In some of the softwares that we will run through in a little bit, you'll see that we've actually put that down as an item for you to do as a preliminary check, and potentially send that out to your employees beforehand to ask them to update their information. As far as payroll information is concerned, please remember ID number or passport number is mandatory. So you have to have one of those things. And remember, please, if you do use passport numbers or you have staff that have passport numbers, more information is required than just your passport number. So if it's an ID number, we just need the ID number. But with a passport number, you are required to have a little bit more detail. You need the country of origin, you need the expiry date, you need the issue date. I think that's all the fields, but don't quote me on that. As far as your tax reference number or your TRN is concerned, SARS are becoming more and more stringent about this, and it is prudent that you get all your staff to get their TRNs, and that you make sure that they all are in the system. Employers and third parties can't always easily get these TRNs on the employee's behalf. So it's not always easy for you to pick up the phone and phone SARS and say, I'd like Joe Soap's tax reference number to put onto payroll. Okay, so it's always a lot easier if the employee can contact SARS. SARS have initiated a USSD service, which simplifies this process. And most people can use the USSD service. There is a link there, and we'll post it in the chat in a little bit in case you want to use it. And that just gives you a little bit more information about that service. Okay, so there are a few items that can be utilized in that USSD service. It just makes their life a little bit easier. And then obviously the biggest one is a financial issue where potentially the payments don't match up to what payroll has. So in that situation, you would obviously need to recon, see why did we make a payment after the fact, or what the situation was. If you come across a situation like that there is a mismatch, and for argument's sake you've underpaid, then you need to run through the process of restating your 201, making the additional payment, and then submitting it to SARS. So this is another reason why we ask that, or that we recommend rather, that you do this early so that you have the time and space to be able to do this. And moving on from there, we get into the ETR match does not, ETR values does not match the declared values. All right, so ETR problems can range from fairly simple, you left out a digit or something along those lines, to really complicated changes that are extremely difficult to resolve. It is easier to check your ETR on a monthly basis than try and fix it going backwards. In most cases where there is an error in ETI, SARS is going to disallow the ETI and ask you to pay that PAYE back, plus potentially any penalties or interest that might be involved. All right, so it is critical to keep on top of your ETR, make sure that any values that you are claiming are valid. And if you are in any doubt, so if you don't necessarily know that you're in good standing with SARS because you have an outstanding VAT issue, for argument's sake, rather mark that on your 201 as calculated but not utilized. At a later point, you can then utilize all of that accumulated ETR when you know you are in good standing with SARS, that everything is clear, you've done your validations and all that sort of fun thing. SARS don't really mind if in your 6-month window for ETR that you restate it, so that you can say, well, I put in 200 Rand, but I actually should have only had 100 Rand. That they're not overly concerned with. What they are concerned with when you say, I have 200 Rand, but now I've got 2,000 Rand. And they almost always are going to throw massive audits or decline that. So that's important to know as well. All right, now, enough of our problems and challenges. Let's move into some of our software. Now, we've got quite a few slides on the software, and I'm going to jump through them quite quickly. So if you do have any questions, please just ask me to hold up or drop a message in the chat. We're going to start off today with our CyberWorks and our year-end submission. So as we said, to checking master information, what can we use? We can use our tax certificate exception summary. We can run this at any time. So you can run it at any point during the year. And it's quite useful then to be able to find out if you have any SARS validation errors. Okay, obviously this is a piece of software that's doing this. It's not going to be exact to what SARS has. So if SARS has thrown a new validation up, it may not have it. But as a general rule, it works quite nicely, and it gives you the information that you need to do. So if you have a misformed address, or if you don't have a tax reference number, or somebody's ID number doesn't pass the validation. To note, this report does not include values. Okay, so how do we do it? We get it underneath our reporting. We select whole year, so that's quite important. On your reporting type, you can either run for interim or for the full year. In this instance, we want to run for whole year. And you can also look for the different types of exception types. So for argument's sake, let's say in March every year, you want to check the previous year for tax reference numbers, you could select just invalid tax reference numbers or something along those lines. All right, so that's the idea. If you want to focus on a single element, you can do that. Alternatively, you can run it for the whole lot, and it gives you this kind of report back to say that's your employee name, that's their number, the certificate number would be generated. This will be blank if you are not looking at a certificate period. Employee income tax number, mandatory information is missing. Okay, so that's telling you that this person does not have a tax certificate, a income tax number. Right, quite easy to look at, quite easy to utilize. You can smash through your errors, go and fix them, and come back and run their report again. Personal information update form, you can use this as a preemptive measure. Again, the steps to extract it are there. Go to the information, personal information, click next, run through all of your filters, make sure that you've got the people that you're looking for, and generate the report. And it generates us a report that looks, that looks something along these lines. It gives us the employee name, number when they were engaged, the address, and then an area for them to be able to update it. So that's very nice from the ability to be able to preemptively look at this information. If we're running this on the 29th of May, we've got bigger fish to fry. The EMP501 and the EMP501 ETR reconciliation. You can use these reports to check that your declared values, in other words, your EMPSA, match on the EMP501 that's been generated from the payroll system. This will also allow you to check your ETR and check that you've claimed that the payroll has the same values of ETR as what you have on your 501 and therefore the EMP201s. Okay, and there's an example of what it comes out as, and that's just the printed version. It also creates a Excel version of this for you as well, which is obviously a lot easier to work with if you're using, Excel or something along those lines to do your checking for you. And this is the ETR reconciliation report, and it pulls out your ETR values per month, and you can then again use that to check that you are in line with what you're expecting. If you do have ETR, it's also prudent to check your ETR qualifying employees. You're going to be checking that your ETR per month here matches your 501, that your people are all within their ETR range. In other words, they're under 29 years, and that their occurrences are 24 or less. So there you go. That's an easy one to be able to pick up and check on. Very straightforward check. Okay, so we're smashing along quite nicely today. So hopefully we'll have a good amount of time for questions and at the end. So yeah, please feel free to ask questions. I really enjoy the engagement. All right, then we're moving on to our Sage VIP Premier and the SCBPP. And as I said, these two pieces of software are basically the same software. One is just in the cloud and one is not. All right, I just need to take a small sip of my water. Okay, let's go have a look at the first Sage product. As at the 7th of April, the release you should be on is 6.4a. Okay, so if you're on Premier or on VIP Classic, please make sure you've created a copy system. You've got your reconciliation has to be done from within that copy system. It can't be done in your live system. And ensure that you are actually in February, which goes without saying. But most importantly, make sure that that version is 6.4a. That was, as I said, was released on the 7th of April. If you're in SBCPP, you don't have to worry about your versioning because they do it for you. It's online, so they make sure that that's all updated. And the creation of your copy system, that's the right wording, the creation of your copy system is done automatically. So the system will automatically create a year-end instance for you, as well as preparing all of the bits and pieces that you may need for processing your year-end and SCBPP. A small aside, if you are on Premier and you wish to have a look at moving into the SCBPP space, in other words, an online platform, then please reach out to the payroll support team. We can then walk you through. It's a pretty straightforward thing. As I said, the softwares are pretty much the same. So it is basically a backup and restore into the cloud. And the costing on it is, from what I remember, pretty much identical. Okay, so having a look at the two systems, we have a utility. So a set or a wizard, I think, is another word of use, or another way of calling it. This our submission process, and you find that underneath your utilities menu and then under RSA submissions. SCBPP does require you to mark off each step. So, sorry, the Sage product does ask you to mark off each step. If you were in the SCBPP, then on the cloud one, you would move here into your tax year end management. So when you launch your payrolls, when you launch your login, you'll get to your launch button for your different companies or company. And if you use the ellipsis, the three little dots, you will then get retrieve backup, upload payroll data, tax year management. So that's where you would want to go to. And the utility will then, once you launch your utility, you'll get a screen that looks something like this. And it tells you that it's in the period, the company is in period 12 of 12, and it's the final period. So you're good to go. This is what the wizard itself looks like in both pieces of software. And you'll see we've had to mark the ones that where they are complete. We put a little tick in it. We say, yes, the step is complete. And this one here, you can see we have not completed it. So it's just a visual guide for you to be able to see what's going on there. Remembering in the Sage software, you cannot extract your Easyfile file until you have followed all of these steps and there are no payroll validation issues. Okay, so let's go through those steps. The first thing is to validate your company information. So all of your company information is there. You would go through all of them, make sure everything is fine, update anything that needs updating. Okay, there's a whole list of details that you need to make sure is updated. I'm not going to go through each individual field. Everything is pretty straightforward, is on screen for you. Make sure that your values are correct, make sure that your reference numbers are correct, and make sure that your percentages where required are correct. For salaried payrolls, the processing period information, it's pretty stock standard. You do go and verify and make sure that you're fine. So you go and check that you're on the right tax year. However, when we're looking at waged companies, this becomes a little bit more important. You want to make sure that your start date and end date are correct of your tax year, as well as that you have the correct number of periods. So it should be 52, 53. So that gives you the number of weeks in the tax year. That would have been configured before you started running your payroll in the previous year, but it's important to go and check that, because if there's something wrong there, it could significantly impact the employee's tax. All right, and then once those are done, you would come back and you go into step 2, which is the warnings and errors. So you go and run the report. You can go and select it, validation only, test run with our current company. And much like the Psiber report, it gives you a validation error report telling you that there is missing information, some information doesn't exist, or it doesn't match the requirements, all of those kinds of things. You would then go through and update all those employees that needed adjusting. Okay. Our next step would be validate retirement fund validation, a retirement fund. Generates a report for us to look at, shows us company contributions, deductions, so we can verify that those are the full values that we're expecting for our provident fund, pension funds, retirement funds. Check that all your people are linked, make sure that the scheme type is correct, whether it's a DC fund, a DB fund, or a hybrid. And then you're going to check quickly that your year-to-date values accurately reflect what you're expecting. Then we move on to our basic reconciliation. So we're going to run a 12-month report, and we're going to get something when we run our recon, that looks like this, which gives us the PAYE on payroll, SDL on payroll, UIF on payroll if it's appropriate, as well as an area for you to be able to enter the information. And this extracts in Excel, so you can enter your values here, and it will very quickly tell you if you have any variances. So on other payroll softwares, you have to go and generate this yourself. On the Sage software, it generates these for you, which is great. You can then have this printed and then have it signed off if that's what your process is. But it allows you to make sure that your process is clean, tight, and complete. Okay. A 12-month report gives us all the detail. We can run that by person or look at it at the end as in totals. It just gives you more detail as to where everything comes from and allows you to check that your year-to-dates are what you're expecting them to be. You can also run a history report, which will then show you all of the detail going back through the periods. But remember that you do need to include your terminations because they are not included by on default. Okay, so there we go. Looks very similar to your 12-month report. Now we're moving into our ETR areas. And again, we want an ETR history report so that we can check that each month on our EMP501 that we've got the correct amount of ETR as per payroll and what our adjustments are. Okay, now we get into the extraction process. So we're going to select a year-end run at this stage, and we're going to create a test disk, which would allow us to load it into the e-filing software. Okay. If you have multiple companies with the same PAYE reference number, you can do a multi-company setup and do the extraction one at a time. However, Easyfile doesn't really mind whether you do one file per PAYE reference number or 50 files per PAYE reference number, as long as at the end of the day everything adds up and all becomes the same thing at the on your EMP501. So as long as your 501 with all its certificates matches your payments to SARS don't really care if you load, each individual as their own disk. Sorry, just as an aside on that, in general, over the years, we found it often a lot easier when you're doing payroll balancing to balance each company on its own and then to do the consolidated at the end, because often you'll find there's some, often when you find there's some anomaly, perhaps you've got a person that's been transferred and their tax totals have been dropped on the one payroll and not brought over onto the new payroll, those kinds of things. So those are potentially why you would probably want to, or in my opinion, you would want to run each company individually. Okay, if you have a multi-company select, here we've got a wages and a salaries company. You can then work through those like so. You review the details. So even though you verified it in the beginning, we verify it again when we're extracting the disk, and it generates a EMP501, sorry, not EMP501, an IRP5 RT3A, as well as the EMP501 reports, and it gives you the export file number. Now, you can see here it calls the file to 0.21, which is the tax year that it's running. You can rename that file to whatever you want. The Easyfile system doesn't really care if it's a CSV file or if it's a 123 file or whatever, as long as the actual format of the file is correct internally. And your destination folder you can put wherever you want it to go to. The certificates run through, and then it generates a copy of your 501s. So I keep saying 501s, your IRP5s and your RT3As. That process, sorry, go back there, can take a little while, much like if you're running your payslips. Okay. As you see, there is a question. We'll get to that in a few moments. Okay. And then we've got our IRP5, sorry, as I was saying, this takes a little while to run. So much like your payslips on the system, it can be a little bit slow. So just give it its time to run through. A number of reports are automatically generated, and that is a recon report and a summary. as well as the actual certificates that are generated from that test run. Okay. Once your test run is complete, you've loaded into Easyfile, you validated, you're all comfortable, everything, you then start your live run process. And you run through much the same process. I'm not going to bore you with it. And we run through much the same process as we would for the validation run or the test run type, except the export file that you get out, instead of saying test in it, now says live. Okay. So that's really important. When you're in Easyfile, when we load that file into Easyfile, this would have been a point to make when we got into Easyfile. However, we're here now. At the moment, there is a bug in Easyfile, which will be corrected in August, where it ignores that indicator. So if you load a test file into the system, and instead of canceling when it says to you, do you want to import the file? It will import it anyway now. So it's not an issue. You can just go and delete the file, or you can just create the live file if you know there's no changes between them, and keep your live file and have your test file loaded, as long as you're very comfortable that there's no differences between your live and your test files. All right, moving on to the next piece of payroll software we have, which is our Sage 300. Now, Sage 300 is also obviously a Sage product, and as a result, they also have, I don't want to call it a wizard per se, but they have a set of steps that you have to follow. And until the validation is complete, it won't allow you to create the export file for Easyfile. Okay, so how do we do that? So we've got to run a validation report, and we can go to that by our tax certificate export under the navigation pane. So we open up our exports, we go into the tax certificate export option, and then our export screen displays. We'll get to that actual image of that before. You then open up the company and you select the appropriate tax year. So let's just go to there. We'll go back to the screen so you can see. So under exports, tax certificate export, we select our company, we select our tax year, and we select validation run. It's really important to select validation run. Okay, so that was on this screen. And we then can have a look at that report. So you can see here on the screen, whoops, here we are. We've got printer summary reports, we've got a printer 501 report, and we've got a printer recon report. Now you can either set those as yes or no, like these ones are set to yes. And then at the top right-hand side, left-hand side, which has been cut off, there is a little button that says export CSV. Okay. When you run that, it creates a CSV format, so it doesn't create a PDF or a report. It creates this kind of Excel document, and it gives us a lot of detail about what is happening. It gives us all our errors and all our warnings, and it does some basic validation on the actual payroll tax codes, shall we call them? So for argument's sake, you'll get 3702 was moved to tax code 3703 because there was no taxable. So it moved the reimburse of travel from a taxable position to a non-taxable position in basic. So here we go. An IRP5 contact person is missing for the company. All that sort of information. So here we can see the employer's physical country is missing. So that would be something that we would need to go and address. Yeah. If we wanted to have a look at a preemptive, or we wanted to be able to go and have a look at a detail, we can run the employee detail report. So that we would find under the reports, open up all reports, go to the employee section, go to employee detail report name, and then we can export it to PDF, or we can send it to an Excel document if you wanted to. And this is then what we would get, where we can see all of the employees' information, and then we'd be able to see if there was something that needed to be updated. Obviously, using this in conjunction with your validation report, you would then be able to utilize that to be able to see where your errors are. Okay. If you wanted to use this as a preemptive report, you would be able to use that report that we just saw, that employee details report, using the scheduler, which would then be able to be created as a scheduled task. We can click on create a new task. and we can then complete the details, save it, and then send all that information out on a regular basis to the individuals for them to be able to verify. So if you do need some assistance with that, we'd be very happy to help you with that. But that's how we can do that. Sage 300 can do that as a scheduled task, so automatically don't have to worry about it on a monthly basis. A tax total monthly. So Sage 300 is a little different, or 300 people is a little different from most systems in this regard, in that it doesn't automatically generate a tax record for the company. So it does obviously update each individual, but you have to go and manually or using manual intervention generate a new tax total report on a monthly basis. So I hope that anybody who's on Sage 300 is doing that monthly. If you aren't, it's not the end of the world. The 201s and that sort of thing still work, but you do need to create it before you can create tax certificates. So if you haven't created your tax totals monthly, go to your company management, go to tax monthly total. I always say tax total monthly. Tax monthly total. Go and create a new one, select the applicable month and the applicable PAYE reference number, and go and rebuild those. If for whatever reason you have made some sort of change to your ETR, to somebody's tax, you've done a year-to-date correction, whatever the situation may be, you need to recreate the month in which that correction was done. Okay, it's really important to do that, because otherwise the system will use the EMP201 value on the certificate, on the 501 recon that was there originally. So if you do not rebuild it, it won't take that value through. So it's quite important, as a matter of course, or as a matter of my own sanity. If I am doing a payroll in Sage 300 people, at year end, I go and recreate all of the tax monthly total lines. So for each company that's only 12, it takes a couple of minutes to do, but you know then that your EMP 501 is going to have the most up-to-date EMP 201 information, and potentially you've solved yourself a little bit of a recon issue, or the perception of a recon issue. Okay. When we actually run the validation and we get our 501 export, we can it creates the reports for us, and it creates a export CSV once all our validations are done. Sorry, so that just was, and I don't know if that wasn't abundantly clear. The export CSV there will only allow you to actually export the 501 certificate once there are no validation errors. Okay. That's very important. No validation errors, then you can extract the file itself. Our run type here is test at the moment. When you are ready, you can put it live. And remember that if you have the employee self-service active here, you also, once your certificates are live, need to release it to the self-service. I keep hitting my mouse, taking it back. The EMP501 detail report, when you've run that and it is in a validated situation, will generate for you the same sort of report that we saw under the other Sage product, and that will then allow us to enter it into the paid column and very quickly see if there are any variances. Okay. When looking at this report, so the recon report pops up on screen. If you right click on it, you'll see we have an export to Excel. So you can just send it straight there. You don't actually have to save the report and go through all the other bits and pieces. You can just go right click and export to Excel, and again, I did it, sorry. If you see there are reconciling differences, the reports to use here, under all reports, we can go and do the period analysis. And I don't want to try and pronounce that acronym, but it is the period analysis report, or we can do a 12-month report, or alternatively, you could also use the payslip analyzers, which are found in the same sort of area. And how would we do it? We compare the report to the tax monthly total, which you can either see in summary, so in other words, one line, or you can go in and drill down and see the actual detail of it. ETI, our favorite. If we want to have a look at that, we do have an ETI detail report. And again, in our report area, in our report section, all reports, payroll, ETI detail. These can sometimes be a little bit difficult to locate. So we've just written all of those little steps down for you. And then you're going to select which month, which calendar period. So if it's in March and it is the tax in the year 2020. Okay, so it's important to note that this field is the calendar year, not the tax year. Okay. And this is a copy of or an idea of what the report will look like. It will give you the ETI remuneration, what has been claimed, the total ETI hours, so that you can see quite quickly whether or not the person should actually be eligible for ETI. Now we get here, we've gone to the situation where all of our validation errors have been resolved. We select our company, we select who we want in it. And you'll see here we can change the screen here. We can change this. There's very little, but you can change that from test to live. And then we can create a path we've got to put in, and it will generate an IRP5 export file for us. Okay. It's okay with everybody. I'm just going to take a 1 minute. So if we just want to take a minute or two just to stretch our legs, catch our breath, we will move into Payspace at, let's say, 9:46. We will jump into the Payspace. That will be our last piece of software we will look at today. And then we'll get into the Easyfile itself. All righty, it just gave me enough time to answer the query in the chat. So let's move on to Payspace. Payspace has done things ever so slightly differently in that everything to do our tax certificate run is all together. However, it isn't a wizard like we've seen in Sage, and it isn't as totally freeform as what we have seen in Psiber. So it does things just a little bit differently. And one of the things that are really interesting about Payspace is that it doesn't download the disk directly to you. You have to go in, once you've asked it to create the disk, you have to then go in after that, once it's told you it's successful, to go and extract your disk. So it's just this little bit different in process. However, all of the steps, all of the things that we've spoken about already hold true across the board. We need to check our master details. We need to check our employees. We need to check our financials, and we need to create our disk. All right. So we go here, we go to our year-end process. So to do that, we would go to our reports. So in the menu, we would go reports, and on the left-hand pane menu, year-end process comes up, we can select our year-end. In the top line, it says retrieve files and reports for February. The other one there is August. So if you're doing a 6-monthly one, we will you obviously select the period that you're looking for, and then which year you select your tax year that you're looking for there. The reports that we can see here, which are available to us, is a non-financial. So this is the validation report. So it goes through all of our bits and pieces. And to get to our report, we simply click on execute and complete the pop-up. EMP201 gives us our detailed our summarized EMP201 details for that time frame, so that we can see this is what we submitted. The 201 breakdown gives us the details, so each person on our EMP201. So if you've got an issue, that's quite nice to be able to go and see exactly what was declared for each of those individuals. 501 report, much the same as your 201, except this is the declaration for all 12 months. And then we have an ETR breakdown report, which, much like you've seen on the other payroll systems, allows us to see who claimed ETR and to be able to validate whether they should have or shouldn't have. At the bottom here, you'll see file history. We get a period, file version, and a creation date. Now, you can come in straight away, launch the screen, and go straight away to test and retrieve a file. The system will create the file for you with all the validation errors without any financial checks or anything along those lines. And it will say to you with a little message on the top right-hand side, your file has been sent for creation. Takes a few minutes. It's not the slowest process, but it's also not the quickest process. But you'll receive an email that says your process either failed or it was successful. If it failed, it will give you a reason or reasons why it's failed. If it's successful, this file history will update and it'll give us period 12 for argument's sake, file version 1, and the creation date and a download option. So like I said, this software is unique in that situation, in that it doesn't allow you to just download the software directly. Download the interface file directly. You have to go back and then actually select download on that file. So here you can see this is our non-financial report. Much like other reports that we've seen, it gives us a detail of our employees, but how do I put that properly, is differently to the others, it doesn't indicate that there is a specific issue with any field. Okay. Tax year end file. Okay. Now we're going to get into Easyfile. So Payspace, really straightforward. Create your file, check your errors, and hey presto, you have an output file. All right. Now let's get into our Easyfile employer. So as I said, we've got a new version. Our new version is the thin client version, and this I'm just going to switch here quickly onto live. And as you can see, we're at 951, so this is actually live, and this is what it looks like, the new version. You can't see a version number up front, and I'm just going to log in quickly into my live version. Some of you may have seen this already. You may have been a little bit intimidated because it asks for PAYE reference numbers and all sorts of other fun things. Remember, that has nothing to do with your actual backup or your actual data that's being stored locally. What that is if you forget the admin user password and you need a secure hint, not the payroll hint that you said, not the hint you set up here, but you actually need to reset it because you can't remember. You said, what was the name of my first dog? But instead of putting Fido's name there, you wrote Durban, and you can never get back to that. You can actually use an admin forgot password, which will require you to use that PAYE reference number and your login details to SARS, and it will reset that admin password. Okay, so it's a functionality that was never available in the old version. It's quite nice. But let's log in here quickly. And this is what your payroll software looks like. Here is your version number up at the top. It tells me I'm logged in as admin. Let me just make that bigger. And I can select an employer from my list, and I can select a period. All right. It also indicates with a green light here that I am connected. Okay. So this is what the new software looks like. You'll remember the old software also had a little menu down the side, but things were a little bit more hidden away. So on this one, we have a dashboard in front, which is where most of our processing will take place. So from our dashboard, we can quickly link out to certain things, and we can do some of our processing. PAYE dashboard is grayed out. Our PAYE dashboard is not there because I have no live companies in this database. Okay, so if I go through the process, I import a file, I get all the stuff ready, I do my EMP501 recon, I retrieve my data from SARS, my PAYE dashboard will become available to me. So something that wasn't covered directly in this training or in this webinar, but I do think is pertinent for people to understand is how would I look at old certificates? How would I look at last year's certificates? Somebody's come to me and said, please, can I have a copy of my certificate? And I can't find it in my Easyfile because my old Easyfile is gone. You can retrieve your certificate history if you have the admin password for your previous backup, as well as obviously knowing the PAYE reference numbers. So if I go to retrieve history, I follow the normal sort of procedure. I select a file, I put an admin and the password and my PAYE reference number, and I have to select a period. So you can only request the certificate data for an existing period, number one, and you can only do them one at a time. I would not suggest that you load more than 2 years data. Okay. At the moment, SARS is keeping both versions of the software available. And in the SARS training that we've attended, they have suggested that you keep it for the next 2 years at least. You keep the old version of Easyfile as well as the new version. And this then will allow you to, if you need to, review stuff in your old Easyfile, make any amendments that need to be made and that sort of fun stuff. But if you do need to do a submission, you would have to go here, request the certificate data for that specific year, make the changes, and then resubmit from within this software. Okay, I hope I'm making sense. If you just need to go and grab a certificate, you can load the old software, log into your backup, and go and grab that certificate and send it to them. There's no issue with that. Okay. Oh, there we go. So reconciliation submission process. We've been on the very left-hand side of this. We've been on the situation where we're getting to the point where we have a CSV file. Okay. Given that we have the CSV file, and assuming that we are now in a situation where our CSV file is clean, we don't have any issues with it, it's all good and well. Okay, we're happy with our CSV file. We can either manually create our employer. In other words, we can go onto the Easyfile software, select an employer admin, go and enter all the detail, employer admin, yes, I said that right, enter all the details and save it. Or we can just follow the steps and import the CSV file because all of our employer information is held in that CSV file. Do you see there is another query? All right, that's quite a long, detailed query. Thank you very much. I will have a look at that as soon as we're finished with this portion of it, and then we'll give you an answer on that. Okay, so I would suggest that all the information that you require is actually in your CSV file already, so you don't need to manually create your employer. You can merely import your CSV file. We'll get to how that happens in a moment. Once we have created our employer file, or created our employer, this will immediately create all the certificates when we import the file as well. right? We then, like our process has always been, we then go and do a declaration to SARS. SARS says, do you want to use my data? Do you want to enter your own data? And those sort of things. You enter your Easyfile login. Sorry, your e-filing login. You get into your that logs into your e-filing profile, and it retrieves the EMP501 data. Okay. Once we've got our data there and our data from SARS or our 501 data that we've captured matches the certificate data, payments match payments, payments match certificates. So we're on a three-legged stool. Certificates need to match what's been declared. What's declared needs to match what has been paid. If those three things are equal, you have zero issues. You can upload your certificates. At that point, we submit that to SARS. And we then have our EMP501 is complete. We can then, based on the fact that we've done all of our validation in our payroll software, we can use the payroll software to generate IRP5 certificates, RT3A certificates. As the reason why I suggest that is generally the payroll software creates a one-pager, whereas the Easyfile software creates a 3 or 4-page document. Okay, it's just a lot easier for the employees. All the information that is maintained is the same. It's just the format is significantly better in the payroll software as a general rule. Doesn't really matter one way or the other. SARS actually don't even really care if you supply your employees with a physical copy of their certificate, as long as they have an electronic version. All right, let's get into some of the steps. Important to note, your import file, your CSV file, as well as any backups that you are utilizing, have to be saved on your C drive. In other words, they have to be local. If you load stuff over a network, over a VPN, whatever the situation, from a flash drive even, SARS have said they cannot guarantee that everything will load correctly. It must be local. All right, so here we go. We go select and import a file. So you'll remember if you did work on the old Easyfile, you couldn't even get to the stage if you hadn't selected which employer you wanted to work with, which PAYE reference number you wanted to work with. Here you can see at the top, nothing selected. We can just go in and we can go and select a payroll file. Okay, we go and use our navigation, our Explorer looky thing. We go and find our file. We say select file. We open, and it processes the validation for us. We get a pop-up message back to say the CSV file import. Now, obviously, it runs a validation first. It says the file is ready. Please be patient. We'll let you know as soon as it's done. Do you want to continue? Now, if you had a test file at this stage, you would say no, cancel. But if you've got a live file, you're going to go, okay. Remember I said there is a bit of a bug in this system at the moment, and that it ignores that indicator, the test live indicator. So even if your file is test and you click OK, it will load your certificates. All right. Once it's completed, it will say to you, database has been changed to whoever it is, whichever tax reference number it is, for the period and whatever period certificates you've just loaded. Okay, import is successful. That's important. Excuse me, if there was some problem here, it would throw you out at this stage and tell you to go and check your errors. We're assuming we've done all of our pre-work, so everything is fine. We can either import another file. So if you had a salaries and a wages company or multiple salaries companies, whatever it is, you could go and import another file, import another file, import another file. You could go and view your employees, or you can go to your declaration. Okay, doesn't matter which one you select. Obviously, if you've got more files, go and load your more files, go to your declaration, whatever the situation may be. In this instance, we're going to suggest that, or we're going to assume that you are now ready to go to your 501 declaration, and we go to our declarations. When we click on that, it throws us into our reconciliation screen, and it gives us our 501 reconciliation work page, and it will give us the list of people that we have data for underneath here. It's important to note these 4 options along the top. Okay? Accept data, reinstate ETR, or own values. Accept data means take my 201 data and regurgitate it for me. Put it into the 501 for me so I don't need to recapture. Very straightforward and should be the vast majority of everybody's first port of call. Okay? Own values. Something is not right on my 201s. I want to redeclare that and put it in. I want to enter my own values. Generally not a great plan. All right. Reason being, you're almost certainly going to immediately initiate SARS looking at you with a fine-tooth comb. Okay. If you're entering your own values, that means that something's gone wrong on your 201. SARS are going to want to know why. Okay. The middle one, reinstate ETR. If you have overdeclared your ETR in some point in the last 6 months and you wish to restate it, this will clear out all the values and allow you to do that. Okay, but remember, all of the normal ETR rules still apply. If you didn't declare it in the month, you can't claim it now. So this is more along the lines of reducing the ETR than trying to increase it. Okay. And then EMP501 history is actually quite an interesting one because that allows you to retrieve previous tax year's history. So you can go and have a look. So you don't need to, if you just need a 501 from 2025, 2023, whatever it happens to be, you can go to the 501 history, go and extract that 501 from that period, and SARS will download that onto your Easyfile local so you can view it at that stage. Okay, so that's quite an important, quite interesting little thing that's been added in. If we accept data, what happens? We accept data, we do our normal things. We log into with our e-filing profile or e-filing login, and it populates the same spreadsheet or the same what do they call it? Dynamic PDF that it always has done. So you follow the same steps there. You're going to check that at your totals owed to you or due by you is 0, and all your certificate values match all of your other values that are there. Okay. Once you've got that and you've clicked on save, instead of having a separate area to submit to SARS, we can open a return, we can refresh the return, we can run a summary report, we can submit to SARS. So our little ellipsis here, it becomes very important. That's where our little submenus are. Submit to SARS, obviously at that stage, you're going to then again log in with your e-filing profile. It's going to submit that documentation to SARS. And at that stage, you would then be in a situation where you have completed your submission. Remember that being completed does not necessarily mean that it has been accepted by SARS. I'll say that again. Just because you have completed your submission does not mean that it has been accepted by SARS. Okay, we'll come back to that in a moment. Once we've done our submit, okay, we will be given a number of options that are available to us. So on this one, we can download our 501 so that we can keep it for our records. If we've done something horrendously wrong and we need to do a full submission request, we also do it from here. Normally, we would only do this if you want to remove your entire declaration and replace it with a new declaration. Okay, so that takes out the certificates, it takes out the 501, the submitted 501, I mean, and basically resets all the indicators on SARS to say that you have not submitted anything. If you just need to make one certificate change, just change the certificate and submit it. We don't need to do a whole resubmit. Right, but let's go have a look here. We can see on this one, we've got a reconciliation status dashboard. Okay, we've got online, it has been submitted, and it has been, you see the status there? Well, let me just show you the status here. It says accepted. All right. If it doesn't say anything, this little update button will be available to you. You can click on update and it'll go and check the status with SARS. Might come back with rejected, might come back with accepted, might come back with nothing. In other words, it's still in process. Until you have accepted here, your certificates have not been accepted. Right? That's really important. I would suggest that not only do you need an accepted here, but you also need to log into e-filing, go on to the PAYE maintenance area, and go and get a proof of submission. Okay, which is a document that you can print from that screen, which shows that you have submitted your 501 and has been accepted by SARS. Okay, just for your own safety, security, peace of mind, whichever words you like, that is what I would suggest that you do. That is what we would suggest that you do as HR Talk. The reason why I've specifically kept this open is for this one here, summary report. The summary report is a new item that SARS has added, and it gives you a summary of all of your submission. So it gives you your certificate values, all that sort of thing in summary, which is really nice for you to print and keep somewhere, or to just make sure that you're comfortable with your submission. Hopefully by this stage you are comfortable with it already, but it's just something nice to keep. And then underneath that is the scariest report if you work in payroll, which is an ETV. Now, ETV, I do not remember the entire acronym. If I remember correct, it is something tax validation, employee tax validation. There we go. Now I remember what it is. And basically what that's doing is SARS is saying that you should have calculated the PAYE correctly, and not just PAYE, SDL and UIF as well. And if it finds a validation issue with that, in other words, it does a tax calc and it can't figure out what tax you've calculated, it could reject that certificate. So it is important for you to download your ETV report and check it with in conjunction with your submission. So you may have an accepted submission, but there might be a certificate that has been rejected. Okay, so it's important to go and do that. Make any update to that certificate you might need to. Perhaps the person has voluntary over-deducted in PAYE, but you didn't select the voluntary over-deduct on the payroll software. You know, that kind of thing. So it's important that you check your ETV report as well. All right, it is important to note that until this says accepted, these will not be available, and your generate IRP5s, RT3A PDFs will also not be available. So until that says accepted. Okay. And there you can just see another screenshot. Here you can see what it would look like when your work page, when you have you've saved a ready to file. So like you saw before on your old version, you had a ready to file button. You now have, it shows as a status is ready to file, and then you would open up your ellipsis and file it. This one is an accepted one, and you can see there you've got your ETV report, you've got your summary, and you can still view your EMP501 report there. Now we'll move into a Q&A situation. Okay, so if Charlene, are you there?
I am, Carl. So far, it's just the one lengthy question that you have. You did see that one.
I did see it. I just need a moment or two to read through it. But in the meantime, guys, if there are any questions or anything you would like me to go over, please just either raise your hand so that Charlene can unmute you, or put your question into the meeting chat or the Q&A. Sorry, I didn't see anything. Did anything pop up in the Q&A?
No, nothing in that section.
Nothing in Q&A. Okay, no, Roberta. So what I'm going to do is I will get a link sent to you. The not connected is a fairly technical issue, and it may need an IT specialist to go and do it. there are a few more questions that I would need to dig into to answer that. However, in the smallest possible timing for answer is no, you would load all of that data for the EMP201s for the preceding years, sorry, the 201s, the EMP501s for the preceding years, you would load into the new version of the software, but you wouldn't load anything for interim submissions. You would only load for the O2 submissions. So if this client is sitting with a situation where they're outstanding from COVID, so that would be 2022, if I remember correctly. So 2022, 2023, 2024, and now 2025, you would submit all of that under the new version of the software. The primary challenge you would have with that would simply be that the validations in the payroll software, if they used any, would be significantly or slightly different depending on the complexity of the payroll in those different years, but they would have to be submitted with this current submission validation rules. Right, so I hope that answers your question, Bianca, but please feel free to reach out either via Charlene or directly to myself. Very happy to just sit down and have a chat through that with you. All right, Charlene, can you? Yes.
I will unmute Mandy.
Perfect.
Okay, Mandy, you are unmuted.
Not on my screen.
She's unmuted from my side, Carl. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Mandy, we seem to be having a small technical problem. Would you mind typing either in the Q&A section or in the chat itself? Just what your query
Carl,
is?
I'm going to try unmuting Zainab in the meantime to see if that would work.
Sure.
Okay, it's unmuted from my side.
It's not showing any unmute on my side. Zainab or Mandy, can you guys speak? And let's just see if we are hearing you at all. Okay, Mandy, thank you for your question. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much for your question. As far as I know, the video link will be placed up on our YouTube channel. So we should be able to send you a link on that. But Charlene, you can confirm that?
Yes, it will be posted on our YouTube channel, and we will send out an email with the links to the YouTube channel with the recordings.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Zunaid, sorry again, a little bit of a technical issue. If you wouldn't mind just typing your question either in the Q&A or in the chat. Okay, and Mike, I think I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. On the old Easyfile, we had to add the employer to make sure the correct employer was on the taskbar and then import the file when you had multiple clients. No, you no longer need to do that. You can literally just import the file. If the employer is in your list of existing people, it will add it to their submission. If they are not, it will add the employer for you. So a little bit less work for you to make sure that everything is working fine.
Carl, Zainab did
Yes.
post his and
Question.
chat
Okay,
function.
perfect. Okay, so I need you to go over the new version of Easyfile. How would it work if we don't restore old backups? All right, so the idea being that if you need to work on an old backup, if you need to work on an old set of certificates, you would need to retrieve those certificates into the system, which is you use that in here. In this retrieves tax certificate history, all right, let's just change back there. View certificate, retrieve certificate history, and you can retrieve that one tax year at a time. So if you need to work with them, and then SARS have asked that you keep your old version of your Easyfile for at least 2 years while they work through all of their bits and pieces. So should you have deleted your Easyfile, your old version, and you need it back, I'm just going to post something in the chat. Excuse me. In the chat now is a link which will allow you to download and obviously then reinstall the old version of Easyfile, which is 7.45. Okay, so you would be able to access your old database files using that installation, and anything that you created new, you would create with your new one. So Nate, I'm not sure if that's answering your question. I'm not entirely sure understanding what it is that you would want to work with your certificate. So maybe just a little bit more detail about what you're thinking you might need to know. And then I can maybe answer that a bit more directly. As far as email addresses go, Bianca, I'm going to put the payroll support email address. Let's check. Yes, that's right. Any queries that you may have, you can send through to that address with regards to the Easyfile, and or if you need to get into contact with somebody. Uh, 100%, both versions can reside on the same computer. They don't impact each other at all. They use separate versions of whatever software they've been written in. So they don't conflict with each other at all. Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, any further questions? Vanessa, I did see that you had your hand up a little while ago, but you've taken it away.
Vanessa's posted in the Q&A section.
Oh, okay. There's a little red dot above that. Let's have a look. Van, no, there is no other. Sorry, Vanessa and I know each other. I'm not just using a random name for her. Vanessa, no, there isn't a easier way of doing it. So when we do the screenshot for the PAYE dashboard, we do it as we will probably have to do it over 2 or 3 screenshots now, not one. There is no easy way of doing it, I'm afraid. Roberta, I think I did answer that. If it's showing not connected, please reach out to that email address, the payroll support email address, and we'll see if we can assist you to get that sorted out. It's not it's quite a technical thing. It's not a straightforward, you just need to click on X or Y or Z. We do need to perhaps clear some temporary files. Okay, and what about manual certificates? Okay, so yes, manual certificates are still available, and you can still do them. Sorry, we didn't really cover that today. Let me just go in quickly and show you. So much like you had before, Unfortunately, this is a live database, so I'm not going to be able to go in and show you anything here because it obviously is live data. But once you have created your employer, which you can do here in the employer admin area, you fill in all your details here and you add the employer. You would then have access to the employee admin area where you could go and add your employees. If you're retrieving certificates from a previous year where those people existed, you would obviously then only need to use the so that's add employer. I can't get to the employee. You add where at the bottom here it says add employer, you would be able to add certificate. And then it loads a similar screen to what you're used to seeing where you can enter your SARS code, search for a SARS code, enter the value, and so on and so forth. If you would like, we can put the link in for or send copies of the SARS reconciliation manual, which is fairly comprehensive for this new piece of software.
Carl, we do have another question. It is, what is the best approach for dealing with the IT88 section on the dashboard?
Not really something I am going to be able to cover with. The AA88 section on this is, or AA88s in general, are fairly challenging. There is a reconciliation, not reconciliation, what did they call it? Just grab that actual thing from SARS and my downloads. And it's run away. There it is there. Third-party appointment reconciliation and guard, which we can potentially send out as well, which is again SARS's own guide. The challenge with it is always, do you have sufficient access rights? Is your user allowed, in inverted commas, to see that, and all the other fun bits and pieces. So it's really difficult to troubleshoot the AA88 section. In general terms, though, what you would do is use the synchronize option, and you would allow that would then allow the person to synchronize those notices, and then you'd be able to view your notices under the what was that area called? Sorry, I don't recall that. Under your notification center. So under your notification center, all your notices will then pop up here, and you can then review those from the perspective of your AA88s, as well as any other SARS notifications that you may have information for. Theo, thank you very much. Yes, we will definitely put it out. Best approach for dealing with the AA88 section. Marius, that is, yeah, as I said, that's fairly difficult to say a best solution. We can definitely forward on that the guide from SARS, or alternatively, if you drop us a mail, the email address is in the chat. We can probably set up a bit of time just to go over what your requirements are and see how best we can assist in that area. As far as the manuals, Rakasha, if you load the certificates from the previous tax period, in other words, you go to 2024-02 and load those certificates with the retrieved data, then all of those employees will be in the area. Will be in your new backup, in your new version of the software. At that stage, you would then be able to use the employee management and go and add the certificates for those individuals. So you don't necessarily need to go and recapture all of those employees again. Obviously, you are doing a manual capture of all those certificate data. So you're going to be entering all their 3601 and 4141 and 4142, all of that fun stuff. But you don't need to recapture all of the master details, the names, addresses, and that sort of fun stuff. Back to the chat. So at the very bottom of the, where are we? The very bottom of the screen on the AA88s, it has a recon, but those RT88s are nowhere on the system. The employee's gone to SARS as they don't have them as owing. Please use plain section as possible. Okay, so unfortunately that is quite a lengthy lengthy discussion. We are still discussing that very same issue from an internal perspective. What we did get some insight into the other day was that there is actually a difference between an AA88 and an ITA88. But I don't want to go into too much detail right now, simply because this is a little bit of a gray area still. So I do understand the frustration, Geraldine. I understand the need to try and figure it out, but it is at this point a little bit of a gray area. Happy to grab an email address and give you, as we get updates, give you information, and potentially send you the SARS's third-party appointment guide, which has been what our basis of doing this has been on. But we are also in contact with Interfile, who are experts in this area, as well as sure, English has gone out the window, as well as having been in contact with SARS themselves with the developers of this software. So not AA88 people per se, but the actual intention of how the software is meant to work. All right, excellent. That's perfect. We will be in contact with you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're actually a minute or three over, it looks like, or we're just at the end of our time. Happy to answer any more questions. Anybody have anything else? In that case, ladies and gentlemen, I don't see any more questions. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Hope we've been informative. And yeah, if you want to go and review, you're more than welcome to go onto the YouTube channel, go and look us up on the socials, and we'll be there. All these things get linked in and from that side. Thank you very much.